Hi folks, Mahli here, and I would love to share with you a story. It's a story I told yesterday to a group of people around a fire at our local HearthFire gathering. It's a story that's seasonal. It's of the time. It's of this time when the sun's in Leo and we just have the Lion's Gate opening, maybe still open. So it's a story that I've created that's come from different threads that I've plucked on in the last few weeks of my wanderings and listening and watching, and you'll notice a few familiar threads, and some of them won't be familiar. Some of them are quite contextual to this land or even this brain and this heart, but I think we'll probably all find something in it, and it's something that I welcome you to share with anyone who it might touch. It begins in a time before time, or the no time, or the no thingness, or the nothingness. In the great abyss of creators dreaming, whoever that may be, and in the dreaming there is nothing but pure, beautiful darkness. But it can't be dark all the time or we'd have no story, so creator began to dream, and he began to dream shapes and forms, and they began to coalesce until out into the darkness flew an immensely huge firebird. Oh, what a stunning creature she was. Her wings aflame like 1,000 fires on each side, 1 billion even. And as she soared through the to-be universal sky, she began to drop her feathers. She would drop them one by one by one by one. And over many, many years as they dropped, they created star beings like fires popping up all across the celestial sky. And those star beings took the shape of many different creatures, many different animals. There were dogs, there were bears, there were eagles, there were whales, there were fish. Here there were outlines of emus. There was a great Milky Way that we could look upon, full of all manner of beings, including hunters and huntresses made in the likeness of us, or us in the likeness of them. Nonetheless, the once black sky became lit up with beauty. And as the firebird flew, she also had to poo. And when she would poo, she would drop planets. Planets into the vast galactic universe. And one of those planets was so fertile that life sprung forth on it, covered with green and blue, a jewel floating through the sky, our great Mother Gaia. And one of those star beings, a very powerful one, was a winged lion. Oh, he was beautiful, radiant, shining bright, and when he saw that Earth Mother of ours, Gaia, floating through space, he decided to make her family. And amongst a few other planets, he ended up with a big family, 9 of them in fact, that he had to look after. And in his looking after, he had to provide light day after day for all 9 planets, but especially for his Gaia, for she was the crown jewel, the jewel in his crown. She was the apple of his eye. And he would very dutifully, very lovingly soar across her day skies and bring light and bring warmth and bring joy and bring hope and inspiration to all that dwelt there, and many dwelt there. Oh, there were all the creatures that were represented in the star sky living there on Earth, including us humans. And on a particular day, when the Sun Lion was doing his winged journey across the skies, there was a group of humans gathered by a village. By a river, a bend in the river. And the children were playing in the river, and the parents were busy making fires, fishing, cooking, fixing their tools and things, and the elders were watching. And one of those elders was a grandmother, and she was watching the children, and she noticed one of the little ones look up to the sky with a strange look on her face. She turned to see what she was looking at, and there was a sight that none would have ever seen before. The great sun lion was dripping drops of golden blood onto the earth. And as as he did so, his body slowly transformed red. The once golden glow was consumed by red. The sky dimmed, the light dimmed, and he began to transcend much faster than usual to his resting place in the west. All were watching, and none liked the feeling of it. Quickly they gathered up and they brought the children in. They said, everything's going to be okay, let's go light some fires, we'll sing songs and tell stories. Surely our great sunlight, he just needs a rest. And he'll be up in the morning with the birds, so we'll wait for that. And you can sleep now, you can sleep. And they sang, and they told them stories, and they tried to keep comfort in the village. But the elders were worried. In the morning, the birds began to sing their beautiful songs, their trilling, their chirping. The kookaburras were laughing here. The whipbirds were whipping. The bowbirds were making their funny noises. And the birds sang, and they sang, and they sang, and they sang, and no sun lion rose that morning. There was no morning. The darkness remained. Only a thin crescent moon began to emerge on the horizon. And underneath that slowly passing moon, the elders gathered. The elders of the tribe, but also the elders of the other tribes, the other nations, the animal elders too, the tree elders, the fish, the feathered ones. They all sent their grandmas and grandpas to a special grove in the forest where the elder trees held ceremony, and they sat in circle around a fire. And they began to talk, and they shared their talk, and stick around, and they shared their thoughts and concerns and ideas of what to do. And they came to something of a consensus. They decided that they needed somebody very special, a champion as such, to head to the west to visit the resting place of the sun lion and see what they could do. See if possibly they could tend to this disaster. Well, the same grandmother that was watching the children down at the river said, I know of one. And they looked to her and they said, who is it? She said, I have a granddaughter, a very special granddaughter. They said, what's her name? She said, her name is Dora Thea. Gift of spirit, they said. Yes, gift of spirit. Why is she named as such? Said, oh, well, she was born a twin, but sadly her brother passed to the spirit world the day of their birth. His spirit, however, or some of it, went into her body, and so she became gifted. She had something of a foot in two worlds, masculine, feminine, living, dying, this world, that world. The elders recognized her gift, and so they tended to it. They taught her the ways of the herbs and the plants with the grandmothers, and the grandfathers taught her the ways of tracking and hunting. And she has become strong of body but kind of heart. She's a very special young woman. I think she's the one. And the other council elders thought, she sounds great. Would you go to her and ask her? She said, I'll go. So the grandmother, she went over there and she walked towards a thatched hut. She could see the glow of the fire that granddaughter had lit with sticks not long before. She was weaving a basket for those sticks. She was humming one of the songs that she'd learnt when she was a child, and her grandmother came in and she looked up with her fierce but loving eyes, and her grandmother said, my dear. She said, Grandmother, how did the council go? Did you get an answer? Do we have a plan? She said, yes, my dear, yes, we have a very good plan. In fact, it involves you. And then she went on to tell the granddaughter, Dorothea, what it was that she planned. And Dorothea felt a big mix of, oh my goodness, I've been chosen by a council of elders. This is amazing. And oh my God, I can't believe they chose me. How am I possibly going to do this? And she let those feelings dance in her body while she listened. And her greater spirit said, Grandmother, it would be a great honor, but do I have to go alone? She said, well, the elders believe that if the Sun Lion is in trouble, it's unlikely he would welcome a crowd. So it has to be only you. She said, what about my dog? And the grandmother looked, and there was her black dingo, Toto Bien. Toto Bien, all good, nicknamed Toto. She said, of course, little Toto must always be with you. For he had come to her when her brother had died and chosen her, and there was something of his brother's spirit in that dog too, for it had its own magic medicine. Yes, you and Toto and the old crow. And she said, the old crow? Why the old crow? She said, well, if you make it to the west where the veil is, you will need that old crow's wisdom to help you get past, for he is one who moves through both worlds. He's been there before. She said, I'd rather not. He spends his days just spooking and scaring us. Cheeky old scarecrow. I don't really want him with me. She said, my daughter, all have a role to play in the great unfolding. Trust in this and trust in the council's wisdom. Crow can go with you. Rah! She heard from in a distance. See, he's always listening. So she gathered up her things. What did she gather up? She gathered up a fire kit. She gathered up a basket and filled it with what food she could carry. She strung her bow and slung it over her shoulder. And she stepped bravely and boldly out. But before she left, she thought, wait, Grandma, how on earth am I going to track down the Sun Lion? And her grandmother said, you will know, but let me give you a few ideas. She took her over to the place where the Sun Lion's golden blood had dropped onto the floor and pointed and looked. There on the ground, sprouting out of the places where the golden blood had dropped, were trees that were blossoming like this one, golden, in the dark winter time. She said, look, he's left you a trail of golden. A golden blossom road, if you will. And Dorothy thought, oh my goodness, this is great. But what about if it runs out, if the blood stops dripping, or the land becomes desert? And her grandmother said, well, you have the path of the moon goddess in the evenings when she travels overhead. And if you look carefully, you will see there is a lantern lit in the west. The great goddess of the stars, she holds that light for you, the even star. You might be able to see it right now. So like this, she set out walking with Toto Bien, and she was told she had to return before the moon was full again, for otherwise her people would perish. They couldn't last any longer than that, and so she moved swiftly. She moved swiftly, but carefully in the dark. And she would walk with the moon through her nightly travel as she swelled, but she would camp in the days by a warm fire, and she would sing songs that keep her feeling safe, and she would snooze while Toto Bien kept watch, and Scarecrow slowly circled. And funnily enough, there was something comforting in that old man's presence. And she had dreams, strange dreams, wild dreams, dreams of creatures in the dark. And she heard strange sounds. But she was bold and brave enough to keep going. And each evening the moon's journey would thicken. The moon would thicken, she would fill, she would fullen, she would wax. And she was slowly moving towards fullness. And Dorothea knew that that was the halfway mark, and she needed to be at the very west end of the world by then. And so as she saw this happening, she realized maybe, 12th, 13th journey of the moon, that she better move a little quicker. And so her and Toto began to move faster through the darkness, always listening, always watching crows circling in above. And then one night, Toto Bien, what happened? And he hobbled up next to her and she looked. And there in his feet were these echidna quills had stuck into him. He'd stepped on an echidna. They'd come out for the season, although they'd been surprised to find there was no light. But nonetheless, Toto Bien, and she made a fire there and she lay him down and she nursed him and she carefully plucked the quills out of his paw. She said, wrapped them up with paper bark. How are we going to travel now? And he said, she knew that he would do his best. And she took the quills and she put them in her pocket. And so they kept journeying now, but they were somewhat slow. She had to carry Toto Bien through parts of it. But she didn't give up. So on the 14th night, they arrived at the very west of the world. A great mountain range rose up before them, and as they moved closer, they saw a deep cavern, a giant archway, and on either side there was a carved lion, a lion's gateway. And Dorothea paused, and Crow flew down. Dorothea, he said, you must not walk into the cave without permission. We must camp here. We must make a fire. Yes, we must make a fire and wait till we invite it, lest the witch of the west be upset. And Dorothy said, what? No one said anything about a witch of the west. And the Crow said, some things are better left out. Make the fire. So Dorothea, she made a fire and she sat there and she sang her songs. And she waited and she watched. And then at one point, she saw something of a faint light emerging, some sort of green light. It was a green lantern, and holding it was an old lady, a very old lady, long black cloak, long black hat. Her skin glowed green in the lantern, and she walked slowly out to the entrance of the cave and looked with her one good eye at Dorothea and Toto Bien, while the other one looked around searching and fixed on the Crow. And she said, young lady, what brings you here? And she said, my name is Dorothea, and I come with my dog Toto Bien, and we're here to help. Said the old woman, what makes you think you can help? Honestly, I don't know, but I was chosen by a council of elders, and my people will perish if the Sun Lion does not return. Do you know what's happened to him? And the old witch nodded her head. She said, well, if there's anything that I can do that can help, I need to do it. I've come all this way in the dark. We've come all this way in the dark. And the old woman looked at her with her one good eye, and she could see into the heart of Dorothea, and she could see she had a good heart, but her other eye looked up at that Crow, and she said, the Crow does not come. He'd been there before, causing trouble, unravelling garments and such that the old witch had spent many, many hours weaving. But that's another story. So, said Crow, I'll wait. And he waited out there by the fire. Dorothea and Toto Bien followed the old witch inside the ginormous cavern. Huge, huge. And as they moved through it, they could see a little fire in the distance, and they came up closer slowly to the fire. And there on the fire was a great cauldron. And the witch went up to the cauldron and she put some herbs and seeds in it, and she stirred them. And she got a great bowl out of the cauldron and filled it, and she walked over to something in the corner, something huge, something breathing, something wrapped in a great blanket of feathers. And Dorothea looked and realized it was the Sun Lion himself, wrapped in his own feathered wings. And the old witch gave him that bowl. and he drank from it. Oh, and Dorothea could see his pain, and she could feel it in her heart, and she said, "Oh, my great, great Lord Sun Lion, what has happened to you?" He said, "Who is this?" And the witch whispered, "Her name is Dorothea, and she thinks she can help." What could a young girl do to help me now? And Dorothea said, "Please, please, I've travelled such a long way. Our people, your children, we need you. We'll perish in the darkness if you cannot return. Let me at least try." He said, he said. "Can you at least tell me what's wrong?" she said. "I made a mistake," he said. "I made a big mistake." "What did you do? What happened?" "I'd rather not talk about it." And the old witch went, gave him a nudge, said, "Come on, be brave." Fine. I was moving across the sky, and I came across the white bull of the moon goddess, and I don't know what came over me. I know he's off bounds, but I just had this ravenous hunger, and I went for him, and it didn't fare well for me. His horn cut me, and the cut is more than a flesh wound. It is a magic wound. I've been wounded to the core, and there's nothing I can do to help it. And Dorothea said, "What? No, please, nothing. There must be something. There must be something." She said, my dog Toto Bien, he has a magic about his saliva. He can lick wounds. He can help them. Please, let that be a start." And the lion said, and looked at the dog, and the witch said, "Fine." And he opened his great wing, and there on the inner side of his thigh was a deep cut. It wasn't looking good. It wasn't smelling good. It was a bit green like the witch. Dorothea didn't like the look of it. And so, anyway, Toto Bien went and started to lick it. And you know what? As he licked it, he kind of managed to lick some of the red angriness out of it. Even some of the green started to look a little better. And she could see in the lion's face as Toto was licking that he was finding some relief at least. And Dorothea thought about it. My goodness, can't believe he went for the white bull of the moon goddess. Everybody knows, don't mess with the white bull of the moon goddess. That's her favourite. He's the keeper of his herd of beautiful cows who produce the milk of the Milky Way itself. She thought, what are we going to do? So what are we going to do? Great Lion, she said. He said, there's nothing to be done now. She said, surely. He said, the only one who could help is the one whose magic has cursed me. She said, the moon goddess. Well, have you tried to make amends? And he said, what? I said I was sorry. That's enough. And it was not accepted. And Dorothea thought, did you say it like that? Humph, he said. Great Sun Lion, forgive my boldness, but maybe it's there's a little more to it. Now that Sun Lion was a man of great pride, as you can imagine. But he was pretty desperate. And so he turned to the young woman and he said, well, do you have any ideas? And she said, well, you know, when I grew up, I used to get in a lot of fights. I had a temper like a wildfire. And I was pretty strong too. And often people would get hurt. And I'd feel bad, but I wouldn't know what to do. And I'd go off and sit by myself and sometimes my grandmother would come over to me and she'd sit by my side and ask me what had happened, help me think about it. And I remember she always said to me that even if we cut a thick strand of the webs of relationship, there's always an opportunity for repair, to tie it back together if our hearts are truly in it. And she gave me a question to ask, whether out loud or inside, and it was the question of, is there anything I can do to make things better? And somehow, armed with that question and a bit of ownership and responsibility, I did manage to repair things most of the time. Maybe that could help. And the sun lion was reluctant to take the advice of some young girl from a far off land. He was a great powerful sun god. But the witch gave him a look and he said, well, how am I going to talk to her? She's not going to come here and talk to me. And Dorothea thought, well, look, if I can manage to sing her down here, will you promise to talk to her? And he said, fine. So she went back outside of the cave and she stoked up the fire that Crow was next to, and she sat there by the fire and she thought about the songs that she'd heard when she was young. And there was one lullaby that her grandmother used to sing. Oh, Sagrada Luna, hey, abuela mía, oh, gracias por la luz que me guía en la noche. And like this, she sang a song. And as she sang that song, she noticed that moon goddess was coming up full now in her absolute full blossom. Blossoming in her fullness. The moon was full. And it got fuller. And it grew and came closer and closer to the song until eventually she watched as the moon goddess transformed from a golden orb into a beautiful, flowing, silver goddess. She stepped lightly upon the earth. She was big like a tree, but not crazy big. And she looked up at her and said, oh, my great moon goddess, I've called you here with a prayer that you might come in and speak with the sun lion. I think he's ready to talk. And the moon goddess looked at her and looked in the cave and she said, that beast, did you hear what he did? Dorothea said, yeah, not good, not good. How's the bull? My bull will be okay, but I can't say the same for him. And Dorothea said, I know what he's done is close to unforgivable, but all of the earth children rely on him. And if he stays there in the cave dying, then all of us will perish. And my moon goddess, what will become of the earth? Are they not your children too? And the moon goddess looked at her and said, yes. Yes, my granddaughter, it's true. Well, look, I'll give him 5 minutes. And she walked slowly into the cave, and Dorothea sat there and watched her go in and waited and just listened in the distance. She couldn't make out the conversation, but at first there were gruffs and snarls. There was some shouting. There was some silence. Then there was some softness. And when she listened closely, she could have sworn she heard the sound of a great cat crying. And eventually, the moon goddess wandered her way back out of the cave, and her radiant light re-emerged as she floated back and reformed as an orb in the sky, slowly travelling west. And when she had set, a light began to grow inside the cave. And at first it was dim, but it got brighter and brighter and brighter. It got so bright that Dorothea could no longer look at it. She had to shield her eyes. And then it grew in warmth, and then she could feel it coming closer. She had to shelter herself, and then she could feel the footsteps of a great lion, and then she felt his burning wings sending hot air towards her as he took off into the sky. She couldn't look, but she could feel and hear him as he headed out over to the west. And she thought, well, that's a good sign. And she said, "Todo bien, what do we do now?" "Ark," said Old Crow. "We head home." She said, "Do you think everything will be okay?" "Ark, your job is done here." She said, "Wait a minute." And she ran inside to see that witch of the west. She said, "Old lady, I want to thank you for helping us. I wondered if there was a gift." And then she saw she was weaving. And she thought, "I have something for you." And the old lady looked at her for the tools, her weaving needles, which were porcupine quills, had been worn down to the nub. And Dorothea said, "Look, I bring these from my land. These are echidna quills. May they help you weave a beautiful world here in the west. And thank you for taking care of our great sun lion." Said the old lady, "It's my job. I've been here for a long time. Anyway, well done, young lady. And if you do ever choose to return, I might have some medicine for you." And Dorothea said, "Thank you." And she turned around and she got Todo Bien, and his foot was much better now, and Crow began to circle again as they headed eastward. And as they were heading eastward, they'd been walking and walking. Still dark, still cold, until at one moment, at some moment, there in the distance, Dorothea could have sworn there was a shift, a slight change in the darkness. And yes, it grew. It grew. The light on the horizon became this dark red. And then golden hues began to emerge. And then, from the eastern horizon, rising up in all his mightiness, she saw him, that great sun lion. He had been restored to his power, to his beauty, to his strength. And she watched as he rose up, and they kept walking, and now their pace quickened, and they walked all through the day in celebration of that lion rising and travelling across the sky. And in the night the moon goddess followed. And like this, for 7 days and 7 nights they travelled until they got home. And by now, when they got there, the joy in the village. Everybody had been singing and dancing since that first sunrise. And she said, "What do you think? What do you think, Grandmother? Is everything going to be okay?" And Grandmother said, "We're still waiting on one more sign." And they watched as the moon goddess began to wane. And she waned until she was but a small crescent. And then, on the 28th day, they watched in the morning as the moon and the sun both rose, and they both walked together across the sky and set. And on that day, they knew that things would be okay, that there had been a reunification and a harmony. And they're not two to walk together every night. No, they had to then slowly separate and come back together. But like this, the cycle of connection and separation had been renewed. And like this, the land felt safe again. The people felt safe. The children, most of all, felt safe and happy. And they were all so proud of Dorothea. Oh, she'd proven her name and much more, and her little dog Toto. And she grew old. She grew old under the wandering of the sun and the moon goddess. And when she was a grandmother, she would share her story with her grandchildren and share her songs. And those songs and stories travelled. And maybe, just maybe, she was your great, 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 great grandmother. And if not, here's a story that's come to you. So if you feel like it, share it with somebody somewhere that you care about, or with your grandchildren one day. Who knows? In the meantime, we give thanks. We give thanks for the rising sun and the work that great sun lion does. We give thanks for the rising moon and what she brings to us. Oh, so much, the both of them. The light, the joy, the radiance, the energy, and the subtle movements, the rising and falling of the tides, the moving of bloods, the fertility cycle. We give thanks for all of it and all those who keep it moving, and the prayers that go out to them. So if you get a chance, give some thanks to the sun and the moon and to all of the flowers that show us that even in the deepest, darkest times, we can find our own yellow blossom road. Take care of yourself and each other, and I'll see you out there somewhere sometime. Blessings.